Joining us now is another guest who we've had on the program frequently, and this is a great day to get his take on where things stand. Professor Allan Lichtman teaches history at American University. He's the author of The Case for Impeachment. He is also the guy who has come up with a list of 13 ways that what he says are the keys to the election and to determining who wins presidential elections. And these keys have worked for him, I think, since the election of Ronald Reagan. He's never been wrong. One of those includes scandal. And Professor Lichtman, first of all, welcome back to the program. This is a day of scandal. I got to think this is, at least on your checklist, a bad day for Donald Trump, or is it?
Well, Donald Trump will say it's a great day for Donald Trump, that he's been vindicated, that this is a hoax, that this was a witch hunt. But I think Donald Trump made a terrible political miscalculation here. You know, he wanted to knock out Joe Biden because he thought Joe Biden was his toughest rival. I'm not sure that's true at all. I don't think Joe Biden has a better chance of beating him than other candidates. But now he is saddled with the scandal key, one of the keys to the White House that is turned against him. And the American people know a fair trial when they see it. You know, you don't have a fair trial without witnesses and documents, and you don't block an eyewitness who has relevant testimony just because he didn't testify at the charging phase. That would be laughable in any trial in America, Canada, virtually anywhere in the democratic world. And there's going to be more and more revelations. John Bolton's book is going to come out. There's going to be more from Lev Parnas. There's going to be more from Freedom of Information Act lawsuits, and all of it is going to be negative. And Donald Trump is going to have to wear this hairsuit of scandal right through the election.
Let me just ask you, Professor, so that I'm clear on this. Is when you're talking about Trump and scandal, is it the Ukraine scheme that's the scandal, or in your mind, is it the way that the impeachment trial was handled and the particular drip of information that we expect to come after the trial that poses the bigger scandal threat for the president?
Great question. I can answer it very quickly. All of the above. He is going to have to answer for every one of those charges.
Of your checklist of the 13 points, has it significantly, to your mind, changed the president's standing going into his reelection campaign?
Well, it's just one of the 13 keys. But right now, as I've said many times, the election is too close to call. There are not yet enough negative keys. It takes 6 to count out the president. But as you know, in the age of Trump, things can change overnight. And there's a lot to come between now and November. So I'm still waiting to make my final prediction.
We've been talking in the last few minutes not just about President Trump, but also about Joe Biden. And I asked if Joe Biden is also somewhat tainted with scandal now as a result of the continued repetition of what we believe to be false allegations related to him. But low information voters may just hear the repetition of this and start to ask questions for themselves about Biden and his son's behavior. Has this trial, to your mind, hurt Joe Biden's standing?
Yes, no doubt about it. You know, one of the time-honored techniques of an autocrat that works is called the big lie. Everything they said about Biden is a lie. In fact, he got rid of the corrupt prosecutor fitting with the United States policy, the policy of all our European allies, and the International Monetary Fund. It made it more likely that Burisma, the company on which his son sat, would be investigated. It's all lies. But as we know, if you repeat a lie loudly enough and often enough, it sticks. You know, there's a substantial portion of the American people that still believes Donald Trump's lie that he really won the popular vote in 2016, even though he lost it by 3 million votes. So yes, to that extent, Donald Trump's illegitimate scheme has to an extent succeeded if your goal is to taint Joe Biden. I'm not sure that's necessarily going to rebound to the president's benefit, though.
There's another Biden topic that we hit on, and our panel seemed, and myself included, were a little bit critical of Biden for deciding not to testify, or at least taking that off the table. Now, he shouldn't have ever been in the position where he was forced to do so, but we sort of came to the conclusion that he may have missed a golden opportunity to separate himself from the pack and also to identify himself as a foil to Donald Trump. I'm curious your thoughts about that and whether he missed an opportunity to help himself.
I think Biden made a huge mistake here, and I gave an interview on this a couple of months ago. I think Biden should have said, I will fully cooperate with the Senate trial. And I expect all of the witnesses that the Democrats want to call to fully cooperate as well. Even if he was never called and there were no Democratic witnesses called, that would have put him in a high moral plane. I think he ran scared and made a mistake.
And finally, Professor, I know your formula focuses on the presidential race, and you have a streak of uninterrupted successes when it comes to predicting presidential races. Is there anything we can glean from what we've seen or from your analysis that tells us about the fate of the Senate? Because a number of senators are in difficult positions and made some very difficult votes today. And frankly, there are a lot of voters who are looking for senatorial blood tonight.
I think you're absolutely right. This was not good for Republican senators in vulnerable states like Colorado, Iowa, and Arizona. That's why they gave Susan Collins cover. I guarantee to you, she would not have cast a 51st vote to bring on witnesses, but she cast a safe vote, knowing that witnesses were going to be blocked anyway. But those senators in those other vulnerable states, they're going to have to answer to this. And remember, an overwhelming majority of the American people wanted to hear from John Bolton, and these disingenuous reasons for trying to block him are not going to be very persuasive. This trial has created a slew of very effective Democratic ads in swing states.
And finally, Professor, I'd hate to lose an ounce of your analysis because of any questions that I failed to ask. So any other thoughts connected to impeachment or the election that are on your mind that you feel like sharing with our audience tonight?
I think the most chilling thing to come out of this trial is the so-called Dershowitz doctrine, that short of committing an indictable crime, a president can do anything he wants to cheat in an election simply because he believes, like every presidential candidate, that that's in the national interest. That would give a president leave to use his legal declassification authority to share our nuclear secrets with China and Russia in return for their help in his election. It would allow him to order his Justice Department to investigate all his political opponents, maybe even journalists like you. Alan Dershowitz has said a president can order the investigation of anyone he wants. He said that in a 2017 interview. And here's the bottom line. This whole scandal really began in 2016 with Vladimir Putin's intervention in our politics to help Donald Trump, and Donald Trump welcoming it and exploiting it. It has ended with Alan Dershowitz, in effect, turning American democracy into a version of Russia and an American president into a virtual clone of Vladimir Putin. That's the most chilling thing to come out of this trial, and it really threatens to undermine our democracy, not just in this coming election, where Russia is going to have a bright green light to intervene, but indefinitely into the future.
Professor Allan Lichtman, author of The Case for Impeachment. Professor, thank you so much. Really appreciate the analysis, as always.